Alright, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Makakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well and teach well. Peace and blessings to the elect out there that's pushing this word in all truth and sincerity. I'm the brothers, coming in and week out to prophesy the downfall of this place called America. According to the scriptures, it's referred to as Babylon the Great, the virgin daughter Babylon, spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. What else? The whore that sitteth upon the beast, so on and so forth. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right into it, and Lord willing, this will be edifying. This is 2 Ezra 15:1. Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord. So it's required of the men of the Lord that understand these the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the scriptures, and understand His prophecy, to go out and speak it. If you have understanding of the prophecy, then you're ordained to be a prophet. You're supposed to go out and teach, on the highways and byways, and bid them to the marriage, so to speak. It says, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true. And that's why, today you have, the what you call the Bible today, because originally they were written down in scrolls, to be preserved for generations. That's why the prophets and the men of the Lord, they wrote these things down. John the Revelator, he wrote down his vision, so on and so forth. That's why we make these videos. We break down the scriptures, line it up with history, line it up with current events, and line it up with prophecies, and break it down simply in these videos to make it plain, write it plain upon tables. Matter of fact, I'll get that one real quick. This is Habakkuk chapter 2, and I'll start at the top. Habakkuk 2:1. I will stand upon my watch, and set me upon the tower, and I will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. So that's what we're required to do, is watch, keep up with current events, look at what's going on in the world, and filter it with the scriptures. That's how that's how you see where this place is heading. You filter it through the prophecies written in this book, and see how close we are to the end. Verse 2, it says, and the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. Yes, and that's what the men of the Lord have done. Whenever we read the prophecies and we see what's going on in the world, we understand that this is the time at the end. This is the time that the Lord has spoken about, through the men of the Lord. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. And that's what the men of the Lord have been doing, is constantly speaking about it. And then you have these naysayers and scoffers that like to scoff and say, oh, the Lord's not coming back, the Bible's just a fairy tale, but although it tarry, wait, because it will surely come, man. Whenever the Lord says he's going to do something, you best believe that he's going to do it. All right. Same thing with matter of fact, hold on, there's a scripture for it. This is Jeremiah 28:8. The prophets that have been before me and before thee of old prophesied both against many countries and against great kingdoms, of war and of evil and of pestilence. So every kingdom, every major kingdom that was set up in the past, the Lord brought up prophets and to prophesy against it. Prophesied their downfall. You had Babylon, ancient Babylon. Then you had the Medo-Persian Empire. You had the Greco Empire. And you had the Roman Empire. And now we're in the Roman Empire revised, written about in Daniel, the 2nd chapter. And, how this place is going to fall. Hey, it's going to fall by thermonuclear missiles, man. Which is prophesied in the scriptures. So, let's get that. Measure thou the times diligently. Yeah, this is 2nd Ezra 9:1. And it reads, He answered me then and said, Measure thou the times diligently in itself, and when thou seest part of the signs past, which I have told thee before, then shalt thou understand that it is the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the world which he made. Alright, and what are some of those signs? Let me keep reading, verse 3. Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world, and that's going on constantly, especially in these end times. It's been going on, really since, I want to say the 70s, when people started waking up to the military politics, all the bullshit military politics that they were playing in Vietnam. We had a lot of protests, trying to give power to the little guy, speaking out against, going to war with, these third world countries. And, it continued on, in the 90s, you had the LA riots, that was back when liberals were, about, giving power to the people. But now it's, took on this LGBTQ bullshit. But anyways, and then, rebranded as Black Lives Matter. You have a bunch of uproars of the people, speaking out against unfair treatment. And it's intensifying, man. All the way from 2016 up till today. In the middle of a lockdown, people were still going out and causing uproars. And earthquakes, that's not just earthquakes. Because you got, any natural disaster. The latest one is Ida, fucked up Louisiana, and then the after effect, the aftershock of the rains, man, flooded those northeastern states. And those are sent for which I'll grab it later. But let me read verse 4. It says, Then shalt thou well understand that the Most High spake of those things from the days that were before thee, even from the beginning. So you read about prophecy, and when it starts happening, that's how you know we're getting closer to the end. I'll keep reading though. Verse 5, it says, For like as all that is made in the world hath a beginning and an end, and the end is manifest, even so the times also of the highest have plain beginnings and wonder and powerful works, and endings and effects and signs. So just like, the beginning had many great wonders and signs. Hey, same thing with the end, man. He's going to make it known whenever where you're about to reach your time is up. Kind of like in football, when you reach the last 2 minutes of a half, in NFL, they give you what's called a 2-minute warning. Hey, well, we're in the 2-minute warning of this place, man, of Esau's kingdom, all right? And when Yahushua comes back, he's going to set up that everlasting kingdom, all right? But let me get that one in 2nd Ezra Scourges for a minute. Because all the things that are going on should stir up your mind, of, all the evils that are manifesting, and all the intense tensions, between one people against another, one country against another. They should stir up your mind and say, hey, what's going on? Or all these natural disasters that the Most High is in control of. You should wonder, hey, why is the Lord doing this? Why is he allowing this to happen? This is 2nd Ezra chapter 16. I'll start at 17. It says, woe is me, who will deliver me in those days? Yeah, because the prophet Ezra, he was getting visions of these end times, and he saw the mass destruction, on a global scale. So he said, "Woe is me," which woe means like destruction. And he was, he was kind of doubting, like, how am I going to be saved in these last days? Which shows that he had an understanding of reincarnation. He knew that he'd be back in his lot in these end times, prophesying against this kingdom. The spirit of a prophet is subject to a prophet. But reincarnation, that's a different topic. I might go into it a little later on, but for now, verse 18, the beginning of sorrows and great mournings, the beginning of famine and great death. Because this is just the beginning. All these uproars and natural disasters and conflicts, riots, little proxy wars. That's just the beginning, because it's going to manifest into, the proxy wars are going to become real wars. All right, it's going to draw these big powerhouse nations in. It's not going to be any more the U.S. funds a certain rebel group to try to overthrow a dictatorship and set a coup, and you have Russia trying to fund a dictatorship to influence communism on these third world countries. It's going to intensify. The scriptures talk about how the least of them shall draw them out. The least of them is talking about these third world countries. During these proxy wars, it's going to intensify, and it's going to get hands-on. These powerhouses are going to get, hands-on, and it's going to lead to World War III, where all nations are going to be gathered into the Valley of Jehoshaphat. All right. But this, like I said, this is the beginning of sorrows, the times we're in right now. All the wars and rumors of war, little proxy wars, little riots, skirmishes happening in different major cities. Like you had that one Chaz in Capitol Hill of Autonomous Zone over there in Washington. Was it Washington or Oregon? I can't remember. I think it was Washington. But yeah, all that's going to intensify and be on a bigger scale. But continuing on, it says, the beginning of wars, and the powers shall stand in fear. The beginning of evils, what shall I do when these evils shall come? And the plain answer is turn to the Lord, because it's going to require a divine intervention to get the hell out of, be saved from this destruction. We're talking about nuclear missiles, hitting this place, with the scriptures give the number in Revelation. Now, Lord will, I'll get into the nuclear missiles of 200,000. I mean, do the math. That's 200 million missiles. All right. But verse 19, it says, "Behold, famine and plague, tribulation and anguish are sent as scourges for a minute." When you go into those words, famine. That's lack of bread, lack of resources. So people aren't going to be eating in these last days. You got something called food deserts, where these 18-wheelers can't get to, and they don't have that mass transportation of goods to different parts of the United States. But really, when you look at how the infrastructure is set up on these major cities, it doesn't take much to make it a food desert. If a bridge collapses, you're talking about a buttload of people not being able to get that food. Right now, or it takes all it takes is a little hurricane to blast through a city, and then it shuts down gas stations, and you can't get those goods in, man. That's why people are resorting to looting down there in like New Orleans. It's because the ones that did stay and didn't get out of there are resorting to stealing, man. And the scriptures talk about that too. It says plague, which is going into different diseases, tribulation and anguish. I'm gonna look up these words up in the Edom Online. Let's see. tribulation. All right. EdomOnline.com, the word tribulation means a state of affliction or oppression, suffering, distress. Hey, and aren't we not in a time of that? Aren't people that don't aren't these mandates, requiring you to put on a mask or else you can't conduct business? Same thing with going into these vaccine mandates. It's oppression. If you don't comply, then you're treated as a second-class citizen. So that's textbook definition of tribulation, and we know where this thing is heading. If you read Revelation 13 and 16 and 17, Revelation 13, chapter 13, verse 16 and verse 17, hey, you can see where this is leading, man. Which I'll grab that too later on. But for now, let's get that word anguish. That word anguish, according to EdomOnline.com, says acute bodily or mental suffering. Hey, and when these mandates were, heavily implemented, in 2020, into 2021, hey, everything was locked down, and you could only go outside of your house if it was for, going to Walmart. Going to different, stuff you were only allowed to leave your house because for certain things that you need. When that was going on, you had a rise of mental disorders, man. Which isn't covered in the mainstream media because they don't want to have, anything contrary to their narrative. They're trying to lock everybody up in their own houses. So if they speak that all the mandates are having an adverse effect, then it goes against their agenda. But you did have that. You had a rise of mental disorders and a rise of drug abuse, alcohol abuse. People trying to cope with their oppression. But hey, the only thing that can save you from that is having the spirit of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai on you. Let's go back to that second Ezra. Second Ezra 16 and 19. So it says, behold, famine and plague, tribulation and anguish are sent as scourges for a minute. All right, now let's look up the word scourges. Go into that word scourges according to EdomOnline.com. Scourge means a whip, a lash. To whip, all right, out of, fetter, to bind.
Yeah.
All right, so all these different famines and plagues and everything that's happening, oppression and anguish, mental disorders, it's as a whip, all right? A whip for amendment. So let's look up that word amendment. This is part of, writing it plain upon tables, breaking it down to, really get a full understanding of what the scriptures are saying. So I'm going into these words. The word amendment is a betterment, improvement. So like I said earlier, whenever you start to see all these evils happening, it's supposed to stir up your mind and ask, hey, what's wrong with the world? Why does this keep happening? Why is it getting worse and worse? Because really it's a correction, That's how the Lord deals. He sends, mass hurricanes and different things like that to make you get right. When you read Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, it goes, starting at the 15th verse. Well, matter of fact, I'll get it. Deuteronomy 28. This is Deuteronomy 28 and 15. It says, because this is like a covenant that the Lord made with the Israelites. From verse 1 to 14, talks about the blessings that would come upon Israel when they hearken to the Lord. You know, when they deal uprightly. You know, and they remember Yahweh B'Shem Al Shai and his commandments. You know, and it talks about the blessings, but 15 on down through 68 talks about the curses. So this is Deuteronomy 28 and 15. It says, "But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy power, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee." So if you're, scratching your head, wondering, why there's evils upon earth and why there's so much oppression and so much wickedness, it's because, hey, the Israelites aren't doing what they need to be doing. They don't remember. They don't try to keep Yahweh B'Shem Al Shai in their day-to-day lives, in their walk of life, so to speak. And then, reading on, verse 16, "Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store." So all those things are supposed to be a correction to you. If you're wondering why your life is so fucked up, it's probably because, you're suffering the curses of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, because you're an Israelite and you haven't turned to the Lord, Because when you do, once the elect reaches its number, once the elect is fulfilled, and sealed with the name of Yahweh B'Shem Al Shai, that's when Yahweh Shai is going to make his return and, send forth judgment on this place, And it's going to start with the house of Israel, because you got 2/3 of our people mentioned in Zechariah, the 13th chapter, towards the bottom of the chapter, about how 2/3 are going to have to be put to death because they aren't hearkening. They're not going to turn to the Lord. And that's happened, throughout many generations, When you read the book of Judges, it's all about how, Israel, there were certain Israelites that would, start doing wickedness, rebel against the Most High. And then, for a correction, as a scourge for amendment, he'd send them into captivity, under a different nation. Is kind of like as a comparison, as if your parents, were to, send you over to mean old Greg's house to do some chores because, you made bad grades, You weren't keeping up with the standard. You weren't keeping up with your chores. So Most High would send us under these other nations, as a correction. And then during that, once the time was fulfilled, the Most High would set up judges, men of the Lord, to go and correct them, show their people where they went off, say, hey, look, you're under this curse because you haven't done right uprightly in the Lord's eyes. So turn back to Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai. And when you do that, that's when they would, fall back in order. They would no longer be under the nation's oppression. And that's what's going on today, but it's on a global scale, because you have Israelites scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, which is part of one of the curses in Deuteronomy, the 20th chapter, namely the 64th verse, which I'll grab. Deuteronomy 28 and 64 says, "And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone." And that's upon our people, man. Israel has been scattered throughout the whole earth, serving we're at the bottom, The Israelites are at the bottom, no matter where they go. Like I read in the beginning of the curses, where it says, "Cursed shalt thou be in the city, cursed shalt thou be in the field." Doesn't matter if you try to, run away from your problems, the curses are gonna follow your ass, man. But like I said, the deliverance is gonna be on a global scale, because you have Israelites scattered, throughout the world, suffering under, other nations. So, those that turn back to the Lord, back to Yahweh Bashem Al Shai, they're going to be delivered in the last days, you know. Matter of fact, let me grab, what's that, Jeremiah 16, it says, how's it go? Delivered out of the north country. And that's the only way you can be saved, man. If you turn to any type of carnal thing to save you, like a good job, if you're living in the city and you think you can make it out in the woods, no, you're going to be cursed out in the woods. If you think that country life is hard, and you try to come to the city where you can get an easier job, and there's more money flow in there, hell no. Still going to be cursed, man. But the only way to get delivered is, when Yahweh Shai comes back. That's what his name means. He delivers. All right. But this is Jeremiah 23:7. Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that they shall no more say, the Lord liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. And hey, you can ask anybody that knows a little something about the Bible. They're gonna know what the Passover was about. All right. That was the deliverance out of Egypt. Moses, was speaking against Pharaoh, said, hey, let my people go, or else, plagues are going to come upon you. And there's a back and forth where Pharaoh hardened his heart. He said that they could go, but then his heart was hardened. That was ultimately because the Lord wanted to show off his right hand, his uppercut, so to speak. He's like, nah, I want to hit you with 10 plagues. I don't want to hit you with just 3. I want to hit you with 10, Pharaoh. To show off the might of the Lord, all right? What he's capable of doing. Same thing today. The reason why, these other nations, are hard in their heart, they want to get away with their new world order and try to chip everybody, and build up these nuclear weapons that can destroy pretty much the whole earth. He's doing that. The Lord is allowing that to show off his might and deliverance from those said perils. All right. Same thing with what was going on in Egypt. But not to get off topic, it says that they shall no more say, the Lord liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt, but the Lord liveth, which brought up and which led the seed of the house of Israel out of the north country. That north country is primarily North America, man. And from all countries whither I had driven them. So it's not only, here in Babylon the Great, but also wherever else, the Lord's elect might be. That's a beautiful thing. And they shall dwell in their own land. So, hey, although Israel was scattered, hey, we're going to be gathered. We're going to go back to our motherland, so to speak. All right? Or fatherland, I should say. Because that's what the Father promised us, that promised land over there in Jerusalem. Which is bigger than just that little strip, all right? But anyways, but yeah, that was the point, is Yahweh Shai is going to be the one. Let me grab that, actually. Let's get Revelation 1:7. This is Revelation chapter 1, verse 7. It says, behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. Even so, amen. And those clouds are talking about the chariots, all right? Or so-called UFOs, or what are they calling them now? UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenons. But in the scriptures they're referred to as clouds and chariots. Because, hey, a cloud, I just read that in Jeremiah, how they shall no more say, the Lord liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of Egypt. But the Lord liveth, that brought the seed of Israel out of the north country and from all the countries where he had scattered them. Because in ancient Egypt, the Lord delivered, the children of Israel by a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. And that's what the, so-called UFO was, It's just that they didn't have, the extended vocabulary that we have today to really give a name for something that was flying in the sky, because the only thing that was, flying that high in the sky was clouds and birds, but they called them clouds. And they also call them chariots because what's the point of a chariot? It's a vehicle. Gets you from point A to point B, so that's what they were calling them, man. Just like that's where you get the modern day car from, or but yeah. So Yahushua is coming with clouds. That's the point. And let me grab it in 2nd Ezra, the 13th chapter, because it goes a little bit more into detail in 2nd Ezra 13, but it lines up with what Revelation says, and that's also how you can prove that this Apocrypha lines up with, the Old and New Testament, because you go into the history of the book of Ezra, and you go and you read 1st Ezra, and it lines up. So that's 1st and 2nd Ezra lining up historically and prophetically. But anyways, this is 2nd Ezra 13, and I'll start at 1. And it came to pass after 7 days I dreamed a dream by night, and lo, there arose a wind from the sea, that it moved all the waves thereof. And I beheld, and lo, the man waxed strong with the thousands of heaven. All right, and this man is talking about Yahushua, the one to deliver Israel in these last days. All right. And whensoever the voice went out of his mouth, all they burned that heard his voice. Did I skip one? Slakia. Yeah, let me read verse 3 again. And behold, and lo, that man waxed strong with the thousands of heaven. And when he turned his countenance to look, all the things trembled that were seen under him. Like I read in Revelation 1 and 7. It says they all wailed because of him, because they know it's time. Whenever you see, a so-called black man, coming from the skies in a big spaceship, hey, people are gonna know what time it is, especially when all the other chaos is happening. Where they're mandating you to get that chip, and there's huge wars going on. People are getting drafted to go fight in the Middle East, and then all of a sudden you see, a heavenly host, because it said that he waxed strong with his thousands, because, the angels are going to be coming with him, man, to perform that evacuation mission, if you will. Because, if I know brothers like to play video games, or people like to play video games. Whenever you play those Call of Duty games or watch those war movies, hey, there's times of war where you gotta what is it called, evacuation. There's another one, basically like breaking people out of their prison, whenever they get captured as there's a word for it, prisoners of war. There's missions where you break out the prisoners of war, and the elect of Israel, we are prisoners of war. We're enslaved. We've been captured by the enemy. So Yahushua is coming with that heavenly host to break the prisoners of war out, to perform that evacuation mission, so to speak. And at the same time, destroy this place, destroy the enemy, so that the nations can be subdued under us. But anyways, verse 4, it says, and whensoever the voice went out of his mouth, all they burned that heard his voice, like as the earth faileth when it feeleth the fire. And that's talking about the laser beams, man, that are equipped on those spaceships. They have power to... I remember seeing one video of a so-called UFO, which are the chariots, the vehicles of the Most High's angels. he was hovering over a volcano, and all of a sudden it just the volcano erupted. You know, so they have power to give light, and but also turn that light into heat, man. And it's gonna further explain it. The verse 5, it says, "And after this I behold, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men out of number from the four winds of the heaven to subdue the man that came out of the sea." You know, which, you know, the multitude is talking about, you know, these heathen nations, you know, in World War III, whenever they see, you know, the heavenly host, you know, they're going to try to demonize them. They're not going to, you know, straight up tell you that, you know, these are the vehicles that are going to deliver Israel out of these perils. They're going to try to demonize them. They're going to call them aliens, you know, invaders. And they're going to all come together in unison to try to fight against them. It says, "But I behold, and lo, he had graved himself a great mountain, and flew up upon it." So that's talking about the size of the chariot that Yahushua is coming on. It says, but I would have seen the region or place whereout the hill was graven, and I could not." So that's how big it was. You know, Ezra was trying to see the end of that thing, and he couldn't. So he's like, that just goes to show how big it is. You know, I think kind of shows you that on that movie Independence Day, with how big it was. You know, you could see it for days, man. You know, it just looked like a huge tsunami wave almost just coming out of the horizon. And you're like, when is it gonna stop? And it never did, man. That's the size of the chariot that Yahushua is gonna come upon. There's also a movie at the beginning of Spaceballs. It's kind of like a spoof of, you know, Star Wars, but or a parody of Star Wars. But at the beginning of it, it shows like a spacecraft, and he's kind of making fun of how like big they made the spacecraft on Star Wars. So it just kept on going, and once you thought it was about to reach the end of the spacecraft, it just kept going. You know, it took up like, I think like the intro was like 10 minutes long, it seemed like. But anyways, Yahushua is returning on that big so-called UFO. It says, verse 8, "And after this I beheld, and lo, all they which were gathered together to subdue him were sore afraid, and yet durst fight." Yeah, because, hey, because, you know, they're afraid, but yet durst fight because, hey, just like I talked about how the Most High hardened Pharaoh's heart to not let his people go so that he can show off his power. Same thing with these end times. You know, all the people are going to be scared to fight, you know, the Lord and his angels, but he's going to harden their hearts, you know, so that he can show off his might. So verse 9, it says, "And lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lifted up his hand, nor held sword, nor any instrument of war. But only I saw that he sent out of his mouth, as it had been a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue the cast of sparks and tempest." You know, and when you go into those things, blast of fire, you know, it's like a blast, man. It's like an explosive force. Flaming breath, you know, so it had that heat on it, man. And sparks and tempest, you know, sparks, you know, whenever you see, you know, certain rocks cling together, you know, you can actually light fires with it. So it goes into that friction, casting out sparks and tempest. And we go into that word tempest, it's like a lightning storm. So that's how he, you know, like I said earlier, you know, when the prophets were seeing these visions, they had to put it into vocabulary that they're used to, you know. But now we have laser technology, you know, microwave technology. You can heat something up without even seeing, you know, it take place. But, you know, that laser technology, that's high intensified light and heat, you know, and that's what Yahushua is going to perform on the on the nations that are going to try to subdue him. in verse 11, it says, "And they were all mixed together, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, and the great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude, which was prepared to fight." So yeah, all those things were mixed together, to create that laser, And it says, "And burned them up every one." So that upon a sudden of an innumerable multitude, nothing was to be perceived. So he's talking about a huge mass of people on an instant, just disappearing after they got hit with that heat wave of of that laser beam, right? It says, "But only dust and smell of smoke." Let me read that part again. "So that upon a sudden of an innumerable multitude," so that's how big, the multitude was. He couldn't even count it. It says, "Nothing was to be perceived, but only dust and smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid." So yeah, when Ezra saw that, he's like, "Damn, man." It's like, what the hell is going on? It's like, that's why he was like, "Woe is me, who's going to deliver me in these days?" And verse 12 says, "Afterwards saw I the same man come down from the mountain and call unto him another peaceable multitude." That peaceable multitude is the elect, all right? The elect and 1/3 of Israel that are preordained to be delivered in these last days. "And there came much people unto him, whereof some were glad, some were sorry, and some of them were bound. And other some brought of them that were offered. Then was I sick through great fear, and awaked, and said, Thou hast showed thy servant these wonders from the beginning, and hast counted me worthy that thou shouldest receive my prayer." But let me go up. It says, some were glad, which is, talking about the men of the Lord that have been waiting for that day, waiting to be delivered from this oppression, waiting to be delivered, from this wicked society, waiting for the kingdom of heaven to be established, waiting for the downfall of their enemies, one to see the glorious return, of Yahweh Shai, so that's why they were glad. It says some were sorry, because the ones that are sorry are going to be the ones that have afflicted the nation of Israel. So they're going to be sorry in those days, and some of them were bound. Yeah, because also going into the other nations that have afflicted and oppressed the nation of Israel, those are going to be the ones that are going to go into slavery in the kingdom of heaven, Yeah, let me grab, because the scriptures talk about Israel being on top. That's the way the Most High wants it. Is Israel on top over these other nations. That goes into the blessings of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. We start at the first verse, which I'll grab. I think there's another one in Deuteronomy, which I'll grab too. Just bear with me. Sometimes 4 or 5 scriptures come to head, and you're trying to figure out which one you should get first. My thought process is going a little faster than what my tongue can do. So let me just take a step back, regather. But this is Deuteronomy 28:1. It says, "And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy power, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy power will set thee on high above all nations of the earth." And that's what the Lord promised to the nation of Israel, that they would be a holy people, a separate people. Because that's really what the word holy means, is to be separate. When the Israelites performed these laws and kept them, they were made holy. All right, and they're made to be a wonder and awe to the other nations. All these. So whenever the nation of Israel starts performing the law, the curses are going to flip. This is Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 7. And the Lord thy power will put all these well, let me start up a bit. Let's start at Deuteronomy 30. I'll start at 2. Actually, Deuteronomy 30 and 1. And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations, whither the Lord thy power hath driven thee. So hey, that Deuteronomy, the 20th chapter, it's a heavy scripture, man. Because no matter where you are, no matter where the Israelites are in the earth, you call the blessings and the curses to mind, and you check yourself. Say, am I under the curses? Well, damn, I must not be doing something right. And if you're under the blessings, well, we're not under the blessings quite yet because we're not on top of the nations. But this is that transition period. We're in the transition period of repentance. And the Lord is going to make a deliverance, and set us on high. But, the curses and the blessings are supposed to be for a sign and a wonder, to know who the Israelites are. Verse 2, and shalt return unto the Lord thy power, and shalt obey his voice, according to all that I command thee this day, that thou and thy children with all thine heart and with all thy soul. And then the Lord thy power will turn thy captivity, and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations whither the Lord thy power hath scattered thee. And this is how Moses was a prophet, because he was speaking on the scattering of the nation of Israel when they went off, but also about the gathering too. I'm gonna just jump down to verse 7, and it says, "And the Lord thy power will put all these curses upon thine enemies, and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee." That's what it's about, man. When Yahushua comes back, all the curses is going to be lifted up off of the nation of Israel. All right, it's going to be put, all the curses that we suffer on this time is going to be put on the other nations. It's going to be a glorious time. It's going to be a glorious time. Matter of fact, let me grab Hebrews 8 and 8, because this is only for the nation of Israel. You got these wacky tacky Christians, or plantation Christianity doctrine, which how you gonna speed in a parking lot? Anyways, where with all these wacky tacky Christians and the plantation Christianity that started with the Catholic Church, you had all the umbrella spin-offs that are under the umbrella of Catholicism. They like to say that the New Testament, deals with everybody, or the New Covenant deals with all nations. Well, let's see what the New Covenant says. All right, and the New Covenant is mentioned in the Old Testament. All right, because here in Hebrews chapter 8, the Apostle Paul was quoting he was quoting the Old Testament about the New Covenant. This is Hebrews chapter 8. I'll start at 6. It says, "But now hath he obtained a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is the mediator of a better covenant." And the mediator is talking about Yahushua. He's the mediator of the better covenant, because now any tribe can pray directly to the Father as long as they pray through the name of Yahushua. They pray to Yahweh through the name of Yahushua. All right, which was established upon better promises. For if the first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second, for finding fault with them. So he's doing away with the first way of dealing with the covenant, where it's the sacrifices of animals and and going through the Levite priests, going into the temple, all those things. It says, for finding fault with them, he saith, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. So it's still pertaining to the Israelites, all right? 12 tribes of Israel. It says, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant. I regarded them not, saith the Lord. So he's not doing away with the old way of dealing with things because he found fault in the covenant. But no, he found fault with the people. The people couldn't uphold their end of the bargain. The Israelites couldn't uphold, their end of the covenant. This is why he's establishing a new covenant. All right, and what is the new covenant? Verse 10 says, for this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts. And I will be to them a power, and they shall be to me a people. So the new covenant is a perfection of the law, statutes, and commandments being programmed into his chosen people. All right, so the whole nation of Israel are going to be programmed pretty much like angels. All right, but we're still going to have the somewhat type of an earthly vessel, but it's also going to be a spiritual vessel too, because we'll be programmed to do righteousness. That goes into the new bodies that the Apostle Paul talked about. How we're going to be changed in the twinkling of an eye, which is also talking about the chariots. How when we get beamed up, in an instant we're going to get those new bodies. We're going to be programmed to be righteous. We won't have to go back and forth in our own members. How the Apostle Paul says, go back and forth in our own members, which is, our mind. You got one part of you that, has that craving for, that Twinkie or something. You want to stuff your face, which give into that gluttonous spirit, so to speak. Your flesh wants to give into that, your lust. But, your spiritual side, you want to do right by Yahweh Shema Shai. We won't have to go back and forth in our own members like that anymore. We're just going to be programmed to know exactly what to do, man. Kind of like an instinct almost. We're going to have a natural instinct to do righteousness. That's going to be a beautiful thing. All right. Let's see what else. But yeah, I'll wrap it up there. Lord willing, this was edifying. Once again, I'm going to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash. Again, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well and teach well. And peace and blessings to the elect Akim out there that's pushing this word in all truth and sincerity. Hey, man, remain faithful. Keep constantly pray, fast, do what you got to do to strengthen your relationship with Yahweh Shema Shai in these end times. Hey, because the devil is going to come down having great wrath to try to force you, to try to coerce you into taking that charagma, all right, that mark, all right. So yeah, remain faithful. Shalom.